So I don't know where I left off, but quick update. I did write Bloomsbury Press. Bloomsbury Visual Arts, London, New York, Oxford, New Delhi, Sydney. Anyway, I wrote them. They haven't gotten back to me about the book cover, but Miss Dr. Elizabeth Way has, and she has stated that if I shot a video and held up the book, which is I'm going to do, I'm going to go through and I'm going to make a bunch of videos actually of books I'm going to read. I don't know if I'm going to do them individually or just do one long video and chop it up. But I'll use it as an intro or something like that. But that's what I'm going to do. The video, it's 139003 or something like that. I'm uploading it now, re-uploading it. She said that if I scraped the image off the net and used it, that might be construed as a copyright strike. So I took the image off that video and I'm re-uploading it now. It's showing on the 16th, or it will have shown on the 16th. This right here will be shown on the 18th. So actually, you guys will see that video, and there's a little note on it that says I took it down because I didn't want a copyright strike. I'm saying all that to say that she also said that if I'm reading from the manual, from the textbook, that's perfectly legal in most respects. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to read from the text, and when I have time, when I make time, I will, I'm going to be shooting a video, and I'm going to hold up the book, and then when I make another video, I'll just throw that video in as an intro and say, hey, I'm reading from this book, blah, 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 while my work in the background commences. So when I left off, I was in the introduction, but I don't remember exactly where I left off. So I'm going to start where I think I left off. I'm on page 3 in the introduction. Black designers in American fashion is divided into 4 sections. The first, Anonymous Histories, focuses on 18th, 19th, and early 20th century black fashion makers. People, mostly women, who are largely uncredited or lost to history. Yet evidence of their work exists. Katie Knowles and Jonathan Michael Square draw from rare extant garments, slave narratives, historic newspapers, especially runaway slave ads, and a host of non-fashion scholarship to piece together the histories of individual enslaved fashion makers and those 1 or 2 generations removed from slavery, telling stories of agency and empowerment through clothing. The third chapter uses advertisements placed by New York City dressmakers during the 19th and early 20th centuries, as well as census data, to trace their businesses in America's burgeoning fashion capital. This section amplifies what is discernible throughout the book, that the history of black fashion is the history of the United States, and that the material culture made by black people, whether extant or not, is vital in confronting and understanding American society. The designers featured in the second section, the atelier modistes, M-O-D-I-S-T-E-S, modesties. I just butchered that word. Modesties, and independent designers operated in autonomous shops during the early mid to 20th century, much like 19th century artisanal makers. Unlike production processes that were employed in the industrialized fashion system, they performed most of their labor themselves or with small staff, from the design concept to the final execution. However, these designers were increasingly modern in their approaches, whether in the labeling of their clothing with their own names or their melding of fashion with art and image making. Kristen E. Stewart uses an archive of Fanny Christie's material culture in conjunction with textual documents and records to investigate a highly successful dressmaker who thrived in the Jim Crow South. Joy Davis and Kristen J. Owens look at Ruby Bailey and Art Smith, respectively, as artists who worked in the vernacular of fashion. Bailey transitioned from a traditional designer to a sculptor, recreating fashion dolls as innovative art pieces that she designed, that she called cotton sculptures or mannequins. Smith, a well-respected mid-century jeweler, created biomorphic, surrealist jewelry that incorporated the body as part of the sculpture. His bold, organic design spoke to the burgeoning cultural shifts that would transform America between the post-World War II era and the radical 60s. The third section of the book, Into the Mainstream, 7th Avenue and Beyond, focuses on designers working within, adjacent to, or in conversation with mainstream fashion industry during the second half of the 20th century. Nancy Deal explores the career of Wesley Tan, an early black designer working in New York during the 1950s and 60s, when the fashion industry, with all the glamorous connotations of the fashion designers, was emerging from the garment trade. He not only carved out a space for himself through versatility and hard work, but also organized and mentored other designers and fashion students. Darnell Jamal Lidsby's study of Jay Jackson follows the designer from the New York industry to Paris, where he rose to the very top. Jackson took over the design leadership of the haute couture house Jean-Louis Scherer in 1970. Scherer. I'm butchering names here, I apologize. In 1970, when the tutelar design stepped away to confront legal issues. In leading an haute couture house, Jackson took on a highly visible role as a black American with fashion's most elite circle. Ariel Elia contextualizes Dapper Dan, a Harlem hip-hop institution within the wider fashion culture, examining his self-taught skills and innovations, as well as the dialogue he created between American hip-hop fashion and European luxury fashion brands. Dapper Dan originated influential trends in fashion culture that went unacknowledged for decades. The final section, The Star Designer, National and International Impact, looks at the most well-known of the designers reached for this book. By the 1970s, black designs were having an undeniable moment in American fashion. Tanya Danielle Wilson Myers follows this period in Stephen Burrow's career, defining the characteristics of his style, weaving it into a diasporic history, and identifying his impact on later designs. The chapter on Scott Berry traces the rise of a celebrated designer, relying on interviews with Berry's business partners, who revealed the New York fashion industry during the late 1960s and 1970s as a smaller, more intimate world than its 21st century iteration. They shed light on the hard-won status of Berry's company as a mainstay on 7th Avenue. Eric Darnell Pritchard compares and contrasts Willie Smith and Patrick Kelly, two wildly successful black designers whose premature deaths disrupted the even greater success they were on track to achieve. Both designers embraced black culture and humor in their designs, making these concepts accessible to mainstream audiences. While Smith created an all-American sportswear brand, Kelly took his distinctly Southern American perspective to Paris. The majority of the makers covered in this volume have not previously received scholarly attention, and the details of their work and their contributions to fashion culture are now academically considered for the first time. Other designers featured in this book are evaluated in ways and contextualized into broader narratives. Each chapter can stand alone as an important piece of scholarship, yet taken together, themes arise that help illuminate not only the history of Black American fashion makers, but also the American fashion system and African American history. For example, the importance of skills taught and passed down through families recurs in many narratives. Elizabeth Keckley took the sewing skills her enslaved mother taught her and transformed this knowledge into free labor in the same way that Anne Lowe's grandmother and mother passed their skills through the family from the antebellum period through emancipation and into the Jim Crow era. It is hard to overemphasize the significance of this practice. Designers working during the mid to late 20th century, including Wesley Tan, Scott Berry, and Stephen Burroughs, had their first sewing lessons from the mothers and grandmothers, all highly skilled professional dressmakers. The book is organized in an approximately chronological order, and there is a clear divide between the predominance of female fashion makers and male designers that occurs during the mid-20th century. The mainstream fashion industry overwhelmingly favored male designers for women's wear, and the Black designers who found mainstream success were subject to this bias. That's me making the belt there, you can see. It is not surprising that the cultural movements that shaped the lives of African Americans from the Great Migration to the Harlem Renaissance to the Civil Rights era also shaped the careers of Black designers. These movements helped bring the majority of the 20th century designers covered in this book to New York City, a creative hub that served as an essential site for American fashion makers. Harlem drew Fannie Criss from Richmond, Virginia. Her townhouse located near Madam C.J. Walker's was a symbol of her success as a Black American. Harlem was also a crucial environment that nurtured the careers of both Ruby Bailey and Dapper Dan, yet they drew different inspirations from the neighborhood during their respective eras. Harlem was recognized as a mecca of Black culture from the 1920s, yet it formed as an enclave over the 19th century because Black New Yorkers were pushed out of other areas of Manhattan. The neighborhood housed all classes of Black Americans, creating a dynamic cultural mix that rapidly expressed itself in highly visible fashion and style. But Black Harlemites were also subject to higher rents and lower standards of living compared to many other parts of the city. Both Bailey and Dapper Dan channeled and capture the intense creativity of Harlem's fashionable expression in their work, while bypassing traditional networks within the established 7th Avenue fashion industry. Other parts of New York nurtured Black designers into the 20th century. Art Smith jewelry design thrived in the cultural simulation and liberal attitudes of mid-century Greenwich Village, where Black creativity expressed through literature, jazz music, and modern dance, as well as in fashion and art, mingled with beat and countercultural ideals. The boutique of culture of the late 1960s changed fashion's retailing in the city and was vital to the early careers of Stephen Burroughs and Scott Berry. Both broke into the industry by selling early designs to boutiques such as Allen & Cole and Manhattan's East Side. Willie Smith, a streetwear pioneer, tied up a century of New York style development, taking a myriad of influences from around the city and distilling them into a modern and distinctly American way of dressing. So there's a drawing, kind of like a lithograph of Elizabeth Keckley. Elizabeth Keckley transformed the skills she received from her enslaved mother, dressmaking as well as literacy, into free labor. The frontispiece of her 1868 book, Behind the Scenes, or 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House, shows her portrait. Oh my goodness, she worked in the White House. Then I skipped another one over here. Although rare, clothing objects made by enslaved makers exist in archives and help to reveal anonymous fashion histories. Cotton dresses made by an unidentified enslaved woman or women, 1845-1865. Collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. The gift of the Black Fashion Museum, founded by Lois K. Alexander Lane. So, given that he I don't even want to get put. Didn't I tell you guys politics could not be avoided? I can't wait till I make the video showing you guys some of these pictures in these books. This dress is, I mean, it's 19th century, but it's halfway decent, you know. It's the kind of dress you would see in those old movies. Spam risk. It's spam. And to think that man put a racist or a white supremacist woman in charge of the Smithsonian because they don't want certain black. I wonder if what I'm wondering is because this is a dress made by an enslaved woman, and it's here in this book, so they can take it down and they can rename it, or they can change the wording and say this was made by a happy slave, or you know, it wasn't that bad because look at the dress, how professionally it's made. I mean, they tend to twist stuff. And if they don't do that, then they literally have to take it down because the dress is pretty tight. I mean, it's not what you would see on a runway today, but it's indicative of that period. And it was made by an enslaved woman. And so when I heard the news that they were, you know, when it came out on the news that he was appointing this white woman to oversee the African American museum, I mean, that was a slap in the face. But if it's stuff like this, clothing made by slaves, I mean, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to say? I mean, it was made by an enslaved woman, and it's a darn good dress. So when I say fashion is political, I don't know what to say because I'm ill prepared to talk about this because it's a dress and it's fashion. And yet just a month and a half ago, this man put a white woman who has, I guess, a history of racism, because I can't remember exactly what it was, but, you know, it was all over the news that she wasn't exactly a fan of black people. And he put her in charge of the African American Museum of History. And this dress is... So my computer went to sleep while I was talking, so I hate that. I got to keep my hand on the mouse to keep it from going to sleep. So he put this white woman in charge of the collection of the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, who apparently has racist tendencies or whatever it is she has. And so I'm wondering, you know, what would happen to what has happened or what will happen to an item like this. It's a dress, for crying out loud, and it was made by an enslaved woman. So you don't want people to know that we can sew, or you want to take the credit away from her and give it to someone else, or you just want to destroy it altogether. I mean, it is simply ridiculous that, again, trying to stay away from politics, but politics can't help but enter into the picture. If I didn't have this book and I visited the museum, I wouldn't do that anyway because he's already torn it up. But if I was to go, or maybe, because there are some black magas out there, you know, the Byron Donalds and the Tim Scotts and that woman who was on TV the other day trying to say that firing someone for being gay isn't discrimination, you know, people like that. And they walk into the Smithsonian because they want to go and they want to see black culture. And this dress is missing. Or even worse, credit is given to a white person. Or whatever is said about this particular piece. I'm not going to say what it is because we already know that they're going to go in there and they're going to move some stuff around, shuffle some stuff around because he doesn't want you know, too much focus to be on slavery. So that being said, this dress doesn't fit that. I mean, it's a piece of clothing. So does it fit the narrative? It was made by an enslaved woman. So does it fit the narrative of focusing too much on the negative past of this country? That's what's at stake here. erasing stuff like this, or pinning misinformation to it or disinformation to it. I just, if this knowledge, this information isn't preserved, and people don't know, because a lot of people don't know about, a lot of our achievements, a lot of our struggles, and it will be like it was all for naught. So it's kind of interesting. I will keep reading from this book. I have some more. I even got some queer books in there, fashion people. So blah 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 blah. Coming up on the end here. I hope you guys enjoyed me ranting, babbling, stuttering. Please, here it comes. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the movie, the video rather. I'm sorry, the movie. Right now I'm punching holes in the dress for the buckles. Actually, I'm punching holes in it so I can turn them right side out. I will see you guys in the next video. This video is, if I'm not mistaken, showing on October the 18th, 2025. I will see you guys in the next video.